Hello there everyone. For those of you who watched last month's video, you'll know that I put it out there for people to come up with names of what to call this new series, and I have to say there have been some absolutely brilliant suggestions. I've got a few written down here on my clipboard. That's the Spirit, Unearthly News, Horoscope, spelled horror, Spooking Around, A Grave Tale, Paranormal Bites, The Monthly Haunt. So cheers to everyone who suggested names. There's some really good ones on there, and it was actually really difficult to choose a winner. But I have to say my favourite has been Shadow Briefs, which is what this little series will be called. One, because it's well, they're briefs, and of course I'm immature. But thanks to Reek and Havoc 9965 for recommending that. Really good name, and that is what this series will be called going forwards. I just wanted to kick this video off with what we've been up to this month. Now, I headed over to Oxfordshire sort of in the middle of the month, and really wanted to go and just scout out a few locations. There's a couple of abandoned places there that potential for future investigations, one of which we'll be returning to next month to film an episode of Ghost Stops. And there was a couple other places I just wanted to have a little look around as well. And one of them was the Minster Lovel Hall, which is this huge manor house. It's completely in ruins now. And I was going to film just a full episode there by myself. And I filmed the introduction to it, and I realised that actually it's quite a large place, and it has a very spooky atmosphere. Not sure at the moment whether that's because of how it looks, and it had a really eerie kind of feel there, and I thought Sophie and James are going to love this place, so we're going to be heading back next month to sort of do a full investigation there as well. And also coming up next month, next week we'll be heading to the Woodchester Mansion. That's somewhere that has been on my bucket list for at least 10, well, probably since I started doing Shadow Paranormal actually. It's been on my bucket list, so I can't wait to go there. We'll also be at the Grizzly Old Hall the week after that. So yeah, we've got loads coming up next month. This month, very little to report on what we've been up to, not least because the weather's been horrendous. So this is something I wanted to share with you in this video, and it's a very weird experience I had about a fortnight ago. So every Tuesday lunchtime I go round to my mum's house and I'll have lunch with her there, and they have got a landline, which I know is a bit of an unusual thing nowadays, but they have got a landline. In fact, I think they've actually turned it off now, but at the time it was still in operation, and it was about, I think probably about 1:30 in the afternoon. The phone rang, it rang through, whoever it was left a message, and just as I was leaving, my mum pushed the button on the phone to listen to the message that had been left, and this is what came through.
One new message.
Now that absolutely terrified both of us. I showed it to James and Sophie. James thought maybe if you listen to it in reverse it will give some kind of message. I can't work it out, it's bizarre. My mum thought it sounded like it was in a foreign language. To me it sounds like someone's kind of humming a song, but it then goes into that whispery voice afterwards. Now, I was actually able to track down where that message had come from and what number it is from, and it's from the NHS bloodline. Now, I do give blood fairly regularly, but goodness knows why that was left from the bloodline. Really creepy. I don't think there's anything supernatural to it, but it was just a story I really wanted to share because bizarre. One of our viewers who has been following the channel for many years, Rick Shaw, thank you so much for your continued support. You know, you comment on every video we make, and you seem to watch every video we make, so honestly we can't say thank you enough for your support over the years. But Rick Shaw actually told us in one of the comments that he has a selection of stories from people he's known over the years, ghost stories, that he wanted to share with us. So he was kind enough to email over these, and I thought I'd sit down and read some of these out to you now. I've printed the email off that I actually received from him, and I've not actually read any of these stories yet, so this will be my first time reading them. So here we go. First story. My wife and I, both now retired, found a family-run cafe we like in Habsburg, which I think is pronounced Habsburg. Could be wrong. So we visited there quite regularly. The cafe was part of what used to be the old Coast Guard's living quarters. Both the front and rear gardens had tables and chairs where you could sit and eat, and there was also limited room inside the house. The part where the family lived was kept separate from the cafe, and we got talking to the owners and discovered that they moved to Habsburg from Sawston, so for a time we became friends. The couple who owned the place moved there when they retired, and their daughter, who was a nurse, was often helping out in the cafe as well. Memory not being quite what it was, neither my wife nor I can remember their names, but we think it may have been the Richards, so for now I'll refer to them as the Richards. Mr. Richards told us that the place was haunted, and that doors would often open and close seemingly on their own, and a pushchair that their daughter kept in the hallway for her toddler son would wheel itself up and down the hallway. Another amusing thing was that the Richards liked to keep a particular door closed, but the ghost didn't like the door being shut and would rattle the handle until they opened it again. This story was also relayed by the daughter, and apparently they'd invited some paranormal investigators over to visit the house. Now I don't know who the team of investigators were, but apparently they were quite successful in their findings, and I wonder if this is possibly recorded somewhere. One day we were talking with the daughter, who as I mentioned was a nurse. She worked at the Lady Diana Institute, which as you may know is situated a few miles from Munsley off the Thorpe Market Road. It's a large building standing in about 90 acres of grounds and is quite a distance from the road, and from what I understand the building was used as a hospital for people with drug related problems. The nurse told us about a troubled young woman who often smashed up the furniture in her room. Apparently the girl had been staying for a weekend somewhere in London, but had died before returning to the institute. However, when the staff went into her room following her death, they found out that it had been totally trashed. The daughter also said that security staff hated having to go into the building at night. Anyway, the institute closed down several years ago and was put up for sale along with all of the land. I must admit that it took a long while for it to sell, and the asking price was dropped several times before it finally sold. I haven't a clue who owns it now, but more recently I did happen to be talking to a lady who was also a nurse at the Diana Institute, and so I asked her if she knew of any strange events that occurred there, and she replied with no. So did the family at the cafe like to spin ghost stories to the gullible, or were they telling the truth? I must admit that at the time I thought they were being truthful because we had known them for some while. On reflection now, I'm not so sure. So thank you very much, Rickshaw, for sending us that. Very, very interesting read. Interestingly, at the hospital, the institute, the story that was relayed there by the daughter, it kind of reminds me of like I think it's called a crisis apparition. Some seems to be quite a common occurrence is people that have died very, very recently. We're sort of talking within 24 hours. Their spirit appears to in places or to loved ones before they've even been made aware of the person's death. And I know they weren't actually seen at the institute, but by all accounts it seems to be the kind of things they would do, destroy rooms, throw things around. That happened sort of within a very short period of their death. So yeah, it does seem almost a crisis apparition, I guess. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Really, really interesting to read, and it just goes to show that anywhere can be haunted. Really, you know, it's not always your creepy kind of derelict buildings or your churchyards or castles. It can literally be anywhere and everywhere, and I think you'd really be surprised if the amount of people you speak to on a daily basis have had something happen somewhere, whether in a relative's house or somewhere they've stayed. You don't really have to go out looking for this stuff. It does happen to sort of people on an everyday basis. Right, so it's that time again to look at some paranormal news stories. Okay, first one here from the Metro. This was on the 16th of February. Files reveal the tube stop where teenager had paranormal encounter. Navigating London's complex and busy underground system can be scary at the best of times. Now commuters have to reckon with paranormal activity on the tube. This comes as Transport for London (TfL) revealed a 15-year-old boy once spotted a ghost near King's Cross station and was left terrified. The sighting occurred on the Metropolitan line in December 23 when the distressed teenager mentioned he had seen ghosts. TfL detailed this ghostly encounter in a Freedom of Information request which asked the company to publish any reported paranormal activity in London's tube and rail networks. Officers searched their London Underground incident reports for the keywords ghost, paranormal, spirit, apparition, ghoul, phantom, poltergeist and banshee. Banshees on the tube sounds like a B-movie that would appear on Amazon Prime. I've got to say, one of my favourite documentaries ever is I think it's Ghosts of the London Underground. Must have come out about 2004. It's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's a great documentary. I think it's just the way it's filmed, the voiceover, it all seems very kind of serious and professional, but yeah, myself and James absolutely love that documentary, so this is quite an interesting article. Now apparently the search returned about 156 results, many of the words spirits relating to sort of drinking spirits. So the article goes on to sort of just say that there were no reports found at certain stations, but from what I can see in here, it looks like there may have been at others. There is a list of the most haunted tube stations: Bank, Kennington Loop, Covent Garden, Elephant and Castle, Bethnal Green, Covent Garden. Oh, that's on there twice. King's Cross, Liverpool Street, South Kensington, and Farringdon. Now, yeah, the London Underground, I've always found a very spooky place. I mean, I'm not big on London anyway. It's probably one of my least favourite places in the country. Just because it's so busy and too loud, and yeah, I just struggle with it. But the Tube, especially, has always been, to me, quite an eerie place, especially if you go a little bit later, or you might appear on a, walk out onto a platform and you're the only one there, and you can just hear the sort of rattle of the trains in the distance, and you have a big breeze come past you. It's a very atmospheric and spooky place, and obviously it's been built underneath so many historic sites in London, burial pits as well. So who knows what's kind of been stirred up during the construction. And even whilst it's been open, there's been no end of sort of traumatic things, deaths and stuff that happened down there as well. So yeah, interesting little read. So this article is from Kent Online from the 8th of February. A ghost hunter hopes to transform one of the town's oldest buildings, which he says is a prime supernatural site. Sean Brady wants to introduce a paranormal investigation site, but concedes searching for spirits is not everybody's cup of tea. He's trying to convince council officers to get a Grade 2 listed Tudor house in Margate back up and running after vandalism left it in a sorry state. Mr. Brady, who runs the Thanet Paranormal Association, says his colleagues believes it has the most ghost activity out of any other location in Kent. But the 33-year-old is not just set on holding investigations at the 16th century building. He also envisages hosting other activities, including murder mysteries, school visits and gardening events. Yeah, interesting. I always think it's important to keep these buildings up and running. I mean, there have been places that have been sort of on their last leg, derelict, set for demolition, sort of things like that, and they've been bought out by people or through a trust or whatever. They've sort of been saved, and people will go and put on paranormal events and stuff there. And I know it can create a bit of controversy because it's not what everyone believes in, and I also think that some of these places maybe aren't haunted. It's just a way of saving the building, and you know what? If it saves these buildings, if it stops them basically falling into complete disrepair and being unable to be saved in the future, then I'm all for it. So here we are, BBC News. A woman creates maps of Yorkshire's haunted sites. A woman who has mapped out Yorkshire's spookiest areas said she wanted to give people a chance to explore the county through folklore and ghost stories. Sheffield-based artist Sian Ellis described her maps as a lonely planet guide for tourists interested in the strange and unusual. The maps feature playful illustrations of folklore, ghost stories and interesting sites such as Todd Morden's UFO sightings and the haunting of Treasurer's House in York. There is such a wealth of stories across Yorkshire and they are all so different, she said. Miss Ellis, who has been drawing for nearly 30 years, said she has always had a fascination with all things spooky. So yeah, just quite a nice little story though. I do like things like this. I'm going to zoom in and see what we can see. I can't quite see the text on there, but yeah, it looks. I love little maps like this. I have seen ones done in sort of East Anglia, not with sort of the artwork that this one's got, but with just like pins on maps. But yeah, that's great. I think they're really nice little illustrations. Some of these places I do recognise. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot there I've never heard of before. But yeah, nice little thing. Next time I'm up in Yorkshire, I will see if I can get hold of one of those little maps and maybe try and visit some of these places. And then the final article we've got here is from The Independent. Scientists finally crack mystery of eerie ghost lantern orbs linked to strange whispers and slamming doors. Earthquake lights have been observed around the world as glowing spheres, sparks, pillars and other shapes. Stories of strange ghostly light orbs spotted hovering over railroad tracks around Somerville, South Carolina, and linked to eerie sounds in the area could be due to a seismic phenomenon, new study says. The lore of the Somerville light holds that a strange light rarely seen in a remote part of town is a lantern carried by the ghost of a woman who waited hours for her husband to return. Sightings of the strange light began to be spun into ghost stories circulating in the 1950s to 60s, including instances of the orbs slamming doors and making eerie sounds. Now, a new study published in the Journal of Seismological Research Letters suggests that at least some of these strange lights could be attributed to natural phenomena from earthquakes, too small to be felt. This phenomenon, known as earthquake lights, has been observed around the world in the form of glowing spheres, sparks, pillars and other shapes. However, until now, there has been no accepted theory for a possible mechanism behind their appearance. Some theories suggest that light orbs sighted during such quakes could be from the ignition of released underground gases like methane or radon, or due to an electric discharge from fault movements. In the latest study, seismologist Susan E. Howell from US Geological Survey suggests Somerville's ghost lore could be resulting from the area's unusual mix of shallow faults and railroad tracks in the eastern US. So again, the article goes on. Very, very interesting, because we're actually in the process of making a feature-length documentary or episode on ancient sites. So henges, ancient formations that ancient people would have used. And a lot of these sites are built on places where these earth lights or earthquake lights have actually been seen. It does remind me very much so of like the Will-o'-the-Wisps, which are apparently again gases released from the earth, this time swamp gases that ignite and create lights and eerie looking sort of glowing formations. Does remind me very much of that, and it seems to be sort of quite a similar phenomena. Whether these are what people are seeing, whether it's something completely else, I'd imagine these could, if this is the case, that it could account for a large number of UFO sightings as well. But yeah, very interesting article, and it's one of those things that people for hundreds of years probably have been seeing unusual shapes and unusual lights in the sky, and sort of we get into 21st century where things are looked at more critically with science, and explanations like this are put forward. I don't think it necessarily accounts for all of these sightings of orbs and things, but certainly it's possible that a number of them could be accounted for this. So yeah, interesting little article there. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much again for joining me. If you've got any topics you'd like me to discuss in next month's video, if you've got any video footage that you'd like me to have a look over and give my opinions on it, or anything else you really like me to sort of go into on these videos, then please let me know. Either drop me an email, message me on social media, or obviously leave it down below in the comments, and we'll see what we can do next time. But yeah, thank you very much. Take care.